So what the street racing does, and they're setting up the grandstands and everything. And this is where the breakup was filmed too, with the tour bus. Chicago should have lots of tour buses like New York's big bus, but the street racing, what does it do? Whether Formula One or Indy, it brings actual... I gotta wait for the arrow. Free to back up and go around. So, what happens with street racing is this is the actual pavement. So they can see how a car and its steering system and everything else, braking and that, move on actual asphalt and concrete that is actually paved on the streets. So they get real performance. And they want to see how the tires track and how the body sways and how it brakes and everything else. How the engine is affected. Truly, the heating and cooling of the engine through going through these streets, and see how the air pockets and that affects the performance. Truly. So they'll get all this information by doing street racing. Street racing is invaluable to car companies. On a test track, doesn't do much. Why do you think they take the cars out in Arizona? They go from Flagstaff down to Tucson, back up to Flagstaff. They want to see how the cars perform in cold and hot weather. Desert climates, and then high altitude, colder climates, snow. And so they usually test them. I've seen Toyota cars and others, and they don't put their decals on them and that. So you're like, wow, I've never seen that car before. But I'm used to being around a lot of test cars. And you can look it up. I already published it. It's the #1 place to test cars here in the United States, because they can test it in multiple climates. They don't have to go anywhere. So now they're going to get all the actual street data and see how the tires track and the rubber combinations and everything else. So this is incredibly valuable to automakers. Now, the funny thing is, why not do one in the winter? Truly. And see how the cars perform during the winter months. People can wear winter coats. Winter gear is very advanced. And they have seat heaters and many other things. So, why wouldn't you do one in the summer and one in the winter? And so you can see performance both in the summer and in the winter. And then you got the spring and fall are just variants of the two. So you want the two extremes. You want the very warm and you want the very cold. So they should be doing it when Chicago is at its hottest. Oh yeah, they want to do it when Chicago is at its hottest and when Chicago is at its coldest. They want the two extremes. And then when you get the two ends, everything is just a variation in the middle. And it's very easy to figure out the variation in the middle. But you need the two extremes, the end of the range. You're the cold end and the hot end. And then everything else is just within that range. And so, and again, it's going to be pretty warm in the 90s, I think. So you'll see how the suits and everything else, the drivers and that, how they handle under these conditions. Truly, it's different than being on the track. The airflow, the breathing, truly, they're not going to get all that wind. There's all these buildings and that block off things. It's not going to get the same type of circulation it does on a track. So it's a totally different experience. But also, now you can see how driver fatigue and everything, truly. So you're talking how police cars handle. and you're going to go to police cars, FBI, law enforcement, how their cars at extreme speeds handling the streets. Truly, how their cars handle, because these are police cars, and how they perform under these extreme conditions. And so all that is really going to go into police cars. And so now you can sell into the Midwest, and you can move it around the world, because you know the performance parameters of the car. Now, law enforcement, military vehicles that go into streets, like they work in Iraq, in their city or whatever. But it's different. A military moving into an urban center is different than militaries fighting in rural areas. It is a totally different terrain. You have to go house to house. It's all close quarter. You have a lot of visual impurities. And so, like in Mosul and that, it makes it very difficult. Unbelievably difficult. That's why Mosul took so long. But the thing is, Petraeus won it the first time. The second time, we pulled out and they went right back in. That was their stronghold originally, was Mosul. And Petraeus took it over. But what did they learn? The second time, it took a shitload more, and a lot more people died to get it back. Why? Because the second time, they weren't going to fall so easy. So they booby-trapped all kinds of houses. They booby-trapped everything. They used tons of human shields. Oh, yeah, they used the citizens from Mosul and that, and all kinds of human shield strategy. They weren't going down the second time. They learned. The first time they lost. They didn't booby-trap or anything else. And the surge worked, and they won. And it was a much easier victory. The second time, that took unbelievable amount of more lives. And lots of people died in booby traps. Oh. And they had to disarm the whole city. It took forever to debug that city. They booby-trapped everything. But that's what Obama did when he pulled out. And all those lives that were lost to capture that territory, given away. So here's the bleachers, and we have the upcoming race. It would be nice if I could come down and see the race, but just on TV. But being up close and personal, I can analyze it much better. But I don't get to go to anything up close and personal. I can only see it from an incredible distance.